how about we go through a little bit again in more detail, the CV, the cover letter, and then if more people join, we can go in the breakout rooms. If it's just us, then we can do something together. How does that sound? Perfect. So let me go back. All right. So for the CV, as we had mentioned in the previous workshop, I always try to make it no more than 3 pages, but it's also, it also depends on how much experience you have. So, but it's always nice to have it short and sweet, make it customizable as much as possible. So usually what I do, or what I used to do and recommend doing, is have like a skeleton that then you can sort of like change and alter accordingly. And you can have like different versions of a CV. I had like different versions depending on what I wanted to apply. If I had a more admin CV, and then another CV that was for HR jobs that I wanted to apply. Because in my previous, like I now work in HR, but in my previous role, I was an office manager. I wore many hats. So I also had like different, like I had a wide variety of functions. So I would pick and choose accordingly, depending on the employer that I was sending my CV to. Make sure the grammar is correct, make sure that the font is readable, be precise, be concise. I always avoid using etc. because it kind of like, I mean, and you're not really responsible for people's perceptions, but people have perceptions, and if you really want to get the gig, etc. can be used, can be interpreted as missing information. So always good to avoid long paragraphs. And something that I always mention is no one, or almost no one, cares about your GPA. And that's something that I always mention because a lot of people, especially when I was in university, oh my God, my GPA. Nobody has asked me what my GPA is in my entire freaking life, which hasn't been too long, but nevertheless, So, so yeah, don't worry too much about your GPA. There's certain jobs, certain employers that ask for it, but it's rare. And if you're not comfortable with your GPA, then maybe don't apply to those jobs if you have a feeling or know that they're going to ask about it. Because it don't lie, don't come up with a new GPA, because that always comes back to haunt you. So in this example, and this is a pretty cool example that I found online. It's pretty much 1 page, and it's really concise, summarized. It has a little bit of style, which I like. I always include a summary at the top, because if you're applying through the open market, recruiters get like thousands and thousands of CVs every day. So as a result, your CV might be overlooked. So I always like to include a summary at the top. It just has with just the main points, your main skills. That way, and here it's in paragraph format, that could work. I use bullet points for my summary. So they can look, and you can highlight the key skills for the particular job that you're applying for. And a good way to do it is you look at the ad, so you see what the skills required are. So you look at that, and that's what you put on your summary. You can also like add some points that may not be in the body of your CV because you didn't have space, etc., etc. You can add them to the summary. So in that way, the employee sees, and if it's something, if you use the keywords from the job ad, then it's going to be easier. People will be able to more easily pinpoint if you have the skills, if you have the level required for the job, etc., etc. You might even get a call. And then the experience part, I always try to list it. Usually CVs are chronological. That is the most common type of CV that I found. There's other types of CVs, like based on your skills or your competencies. And I made at some point a CV like that. I'm not a big fan. I prefer the chronological ones, to be honest. But I always try to list first the skills that are the most pertinent and relevant to the job, which is why I always say the job ad is really your best friend. You're going to use that to pick and choose what you include on your CV, what you include in your letter. So you put your experience here. As you can see, there's dates. I never put the dates. I always leave it vague. I only put the years. Because, for instance, what happened to me early in my career is that I did a couple of contracts and I worked as an internship for a couple of companies, and those were like very short duration. So one was in 2017, the other one was in late 2017, the other one in early 2018. I didn't put that it lasted a month. So I didn't put November to December. I just put 2017. They don't need to know. Then you can, at the interview, if they ask you how long were you there, then you can say, oh, it was a contract or whatnot. But always leave it vague. Then, whoops. There. So use the verbs. Try to use the verbs when you start to describe the tasks that you did or your responsibilities. Some people say use the verbs in infinitive. Some others depend. So for instance, my job search advisor previously advised me to use the verbs in the past tense when I was describing jobs that I was no longer there. So for instance, if a job that I got last year, then I would put the verbs in the past. Then in the current job, in the job that you presently have, then you put the verbs in infinitive because you're still doing that. Does that make sense? So that's kind of like the way that I prefer going about it when it comes to verbs. Oops, sorry. So then when it comes to on the CV, you can use the acronyms, but put in parentheses what they mean. So for instance, if you're in Montreal, if you have experience in Montreal, let's say working for the SAQ, which is the liquor store in Montreal, then you would put on your CV that you worked at. If you want to put the initials SAQ, put in parentheses what it means so that people are not left wondering. Don't use vocabulary that is too rare, too technical, or too complex. It should be as clear as possible. And yeah, that's for the first part. Then you can include your education as well. Well, you definitely should include your education, your personal information, the courses. So your courses, sometimes I've included my courses, sometimes I haven't, depending on, it really depends on the situation. For instance, in my case, most of my work experience has been in administration and human resources. So if I were to, and early in my career, when I was trying to get a job in marketing, at some point I listed the relevant courses on my CV because I wanted employers to understand that I had the actual training for that. Then let me see here. the skills. So I always like to list, I always like to list a few, and like I do technical skills, the kinds of software, etc. that I know. I do some hard skills and soft skills. And then the language is very important. Then hobbies and interests, I put like maybe 3 or 4 maximum. I tried not to put too much. And then at the bottom, you put references upon request. You don't have to include the references in your CV. So far, so good. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So I've heard like different things about the references at the bottom of a resume or a CV. Like sometimes people say like even having that category, like just saying like reference available is like a little outdated because it's kind of implied that you'll have references available at the interview. Is that like would that depend on anything, like whether or not you
Yes. So if you don't have references, don't put it. Like you would put that only if you have references. That's a very good point.
okay.
You would only put that if you have references, because if you don't, and then they're like, can you send us references? You're like, oh, you don't have any. So yeah, it's always like that is conditional to having references, obviously. And the reason why I kind of like it, you don't have to put it either. It's pretty optional. I used to put it because in some jobs they would ask for references.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of asking for references because there's no way to check if those are like real references or not.
Yeah.
So and I've had situations where some people have told me like, can I put you as a reference? And I'm like, I've never worked with you. And they're like, no, but can you do me the favor? And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I'm not putting my name out there, so if I haven't worked with you. So but it happens is what I'm trying to say. So there's really no way to check. So I'm never like a fan of those. Some employers do ask for references still.
Yeah. A lot do.
Yeah, but you would put that if you have references. If you don't, then don't put it.
Okay.
Like very early in my career, me being an immigrant and everything, obviously at the very beginning I didn't have any references, so I left that part out. Some employers would ask me anyways, do you have any references? And I would say like, I'm new to Canada, so no. So but I mean, it's definitely a conversation, like it comes up. So the conclusion of this whole spiel that I'm giving is only put that if you have the references and if you feel comfortable. If you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to add it.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions? And this is also like, keep in mind, this is not written in stone. There is not one way only to write a CV. There's different ways. So this is the way I'm using this one because it's the way that has worked best for me. This format really got me like lots of calls, like 3, 4, sometimes even 5 a week when I was job searching. So it's a format that I recommend, but it's not written in stone. And there are different formats available on the internet that you can check. Some people like to include accomplishments through in the body of the CV. So they would put the work experience, So the title, the company, the city, then the year, and then tasks. And that's why I put it at the bottom, 3 to 4 tasks and or accomplishments. Some people do like to include that accomplishments, the accomplishments, but not every job has, like every job is different. Not every job has the what we in our minds think of accomplishments, like I increased revenue by whatever percentage. If you did and you can include it, perfect. But there are other jobs like support roles that you don't necessarily increase revenue for the company. The accomplishments are different, or they are maybe like harder for the average Joe to fully see or appreciate. I was an office manager before, and I always say it's kind of like a job that it's a very important job, because you manage the everything that everybody else in the company needs to do their job, but people don't necessarily appreciate it because they don't necessarily see. They come to the office that is well managed, and then they don't see you running and doing stuff behind the scenes to make sure that they have a nice workplace. So that's the tricky part. When I left my office manager job, I was like, okay, how do I list my accomplishments? Because my accomplishments were pretty different. I did not increase revenue or anything like that, because obviously it wasn't. My job was not part of that increasing revenue. Um, and so I didn't really include accomplishments on my CV. I included the skills and other things. So it's not set in stone. You have to like sort of like see and pick and choose what you want to include and what you want to leave out. Also, another thing, if you do in the part of your studies and your diplomas, you can also add certifications. Like if you're a member of, I mean, we don't have those in Canada, I don't think, honor societies, but if you're a member of an honor society, you can add that. You can also add a section for volunteering. A lot of employers like to see volunteering on a CV because it shows that you care. It also shows that volunteering is a very good way to acquire experience, especially when it's like really early in your career and you don't have much experience. You can always volunteer, get a volunteer job, and work on that, because it is going to give you skills, and then you'll be able to put it on your CV. Another thing that I wanted to mention, very important, if you guys have worked in internships. So if you worked at an internship as a software developer intern, you don't have to put intern, just put software developer. You can mention it later on that it was an internship or a contract, but you don't have to put intern. You can just put software developer. And that's always something that I recommend, because it's work experience. Sometimes some employers, not everyone, but some employers like kind of like give a negative connotation to the work intern, and they're like, oh my God, it was an internship, et cetera, whatnot. So it's kind of like, this guy is kind of junior, not much experience. So you don't have to put the word intern. You did the job anyways, whether you were an intern or a full-time employee or a contractor or whatever, you have the experience. And then that is it for the CV. Questions up until this point? Any other questions? Don't be shy.
No, I just have a comment.
Yes.
I just find that really helpful, like what you said about like the internships, because I find that sometimes a lot of people look down on contract work or part-time jobs as well. And it's at the end of the day, you're still gaining experience and making connections, and so they're just as valid, if anything, as full-time jobs, and they fill in gaps in the resume. So
Yeah.
yeah, I like that you mentioned like you don't necessarily have to put that it was an internship. I think it goes the same, like you don't necessarily have to put that it was contract or part-time. Like
Exactly.
what we usually say is like the resume isn't to get you the job, it's to get you the interview. So you can like
Exactly.
clarify that in the interview if it comes up and if they do ask.
Yeah, you just said it perfect. And that's something that I was going to say actually as well. The job, it's that's going to happen at the interview. The cover letter, the resume is to get you in that interview, to put your ass on that seat and to get interviewed for the role. Because then in the interviews where you're going to get to show your skills. And if it was an internship or a contract or whatever, it will be easier for you to say, oh yeah, it was an internship and I learned this, and that, and I became an expert in this, or that. It was a great opportunity because I learned so much. And so you're able to say that. You cannot say that on a CV. You cannot really say that on a cover letter. That's why it's very important. You did a contract, an internship, whatever, even if it lasted 2 weeks. I did one that lasted 2 weeks. And I put, and that was the only one I did in 2018 because nobody at the time wanted to hire me because it was like not enough experience in Canada. Your high heels, your makeup, your purse, your this, you're unprofessional. And I was like dressed like any person would, but for some reason, because I was assigned male at birth, then it was a problem. So it was the only job I got in 2018. It lasted 2 weeks. I didn't put on my CV 2 weeks. I put 2018, period, gap covered, you know, and then you can mention it. It was a contract. And if they ask you, if they don't ask you, you don't have to say squat. So always important to keep that in mind and own your thing. It's another piece of advice. Own your experience. Be proud about it. Even if it was a short period of time, be proud and confident and secure. It's easier said than done, obviously, but be proud, confident, secure that you have the experience and that you can learn, and always show that you're willing to learn and that you're interested in learning in and developing, etc., etc. It's because that's a very important thing. You can have 10 years of experience, but if you come to the interview with the mindset of, I have 10 years of experience, there's nothing else that I need to learn, I am an expert in this, and that's why you need to hire me because I'm an expert, and you're not going to have to, it's that mindset will not take you far because there's always room for learning and improving, etc., etc. So show that you are there to learn and that you bring all your skills and qualifications and your experience and everything that you have acquired. You bring that and you want to build on that, make it grow. Think of it like a plant, you know, it might be like a bush or a tiny like little plant that is going to turn into a tree at some point as you work. Comments, questions, insults, rotten tomatoes, hopefully not. um so far so good. Should we move on?
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Perfect. So now let's look at the cover letter. And the cover letter, it's pretty much to capture, kind of like the CV, to capture the interest of your employer. So think of it this way. The cover letter, and I know that we're going backwards because we started with the interview, then the CV, then the cover letter, but given the time constraints that we have, we started like a little upside down, but think of it this way. The cover letter will attract attention to your CV. On the CV itself, the summary will be kind of like the catch to read the whole thing. And then the CV will be kind of like what links you to the first phone call, the first thing that will get you to the interview. Sometimes it's a phone call to tell you we want to interview you this day. Sometimes it's a phone call to screen you a little bit further and then interview you. Either way, this is your link to put you in that room getting interviewed. And so the letter captures the attention of the employee. Um, and it indicates, one, that you're available, two, that you're grateful for the opportunity and that you really want the opportunity to have an interview and discuss things further. You can also add things here and there that are not on your CV, or elaborate on things that are on your CV. I rarely apply to a job without a cover letter. So always put your CV, always like include a cover letter before you send your CV. And just like your CV, when you're customizing the cover letter, try to use keywords from the job ad. So you can highlight additional skills that are not on your CV, but very important, it has to be related. So for instance, if there's a job that you didn't include on your CV, and then all of a sudden you start talking about that job that is not on your CV, not really a good idea. Like if you really, if it's important for the role that you're applying to, then you might want to consider including it on your CV and in your letter. If not, leave it out. Then customize the letter for whenever possible for every employer. Make sure the grammar is correct. Make sure the font is readable. Be precise, be concise, and avoid like crazy long paragraphs. And the last thing is that I wanted to mention is prose is your BFF. Don't use bullet points in the cover letter. It kind of looks like, because I've seen cover letters that people are like, let me mention some of my skills, and then bullet points. It kind of looks like, oh my God, like he didn't have much time, or she or they didn't have much time. And so they added the bullet points, and then that's it. You always try to make it like put paragraphs, and yeah, make sure that the grammar is correct, that the paragraphs connect with each other. So it starts with the header, and in the header you put the city, the date. Some people include the address. I never included the address because in this day and age of everything being on the internet and digital, I don't really put the address anymore. I just put, I'm in Montreal, so I would put Montreal, the date, and then immediately I would start with dear sir or madam, because I was applying on Indeed or on the website. So they kind of like, they already knew for which job I was applying to. That said, and this brings me to the body of the letter. In the body of the letter, I always included the position and the name of the company. So you address the person. If you don't know the person, then you use dear sir or madam, and you include the position. So I read your ad for the, let's say, front-end developer position on your website, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I am very interested in working for John Doe company, and that is kind of like your introduction. In the body, you would speak of your experience, your competencies, your skills, etc. As I said, use the keywords and the verbs from the job post in order to customize it, and so that it catches the attention, because it's usually the recruiter or the HR team, along with the hiring managers that put together that job description. So, and that have read it obviously before they post it. So if you use those keywords in your letter, in your CV, it's going to ring a bell, and it's going to bring that kind of like connection. Then when we get to the closing paragraph, always include a call to action. So I used to write my paragraph in my closing paragraph. I would love to be able to discuss my skills and qualifications further with you. Sorry, I would love to have an interview with you so that I could further discuss my skills and qualifications. So you kind of like put a call to action, and then you look grateful. So thanks in advance for your time and consideration. And then you close with sincerely. Don't put kind regards, warm regards, all the best. Just make it like very formal, put sincerely, and your signature or your name. And this is another thing that is optional. At the bottom, I always add in well, those are not parentheses, but whatever those are, I would always put enclosure at the bottom because it indicates that the CV comes right after, that it's attached. So far, so good. Any questions? I got a cat here in my eye. Sorry. No questions? All right. So I think that is pretty much what I had. So, well, so at this point, if you guys don't have any questions, we can jump into the breakout rooms and we can check what the CV and the letter that you've made are. A career, oh, I see here a question. A career counselor said to sign off with regards. You can say regards, but regards is kind of like more casual, a little bit more casual. So I always like the formal version is sincerely and your name. You could sign like end it with regards, but it's a little bit more casual. Like regards is once at least one step below sincerely. But then again, it's up to you. Like I mentioned for the CV, this isn't written in stone. There's not one way to do it. I always avoided when finishing a letter, I always avoided the kind regards or the warm regards. Regards alone, yeah, but it's more casual is what I'm trying to say. But if that's what you feel comfortable using, then by all means use that one. There's not one way to do this. You know what I mean? So, any other questions? Oh, so it's different that kind warm. Yes, it is different that kind regards, warm regards. I mean, at least to me, it sounds different to me. Regards, and then there's like kind regards or warm regards. That feels to me more casual, like more chummy, you know, whereas sincerely it's like you're keeping the distance because keep in mind that you don't know the person that you're talking to. Whereas regards, kind regards, warm regards in particular feels to me feels pretty chummy. So I wouldn't use it. But again, there's not one way, not written in stone. And if that's what you're comfortable using, then by all means. Make sense? All right. So if nobody else has any more questions, and if more questions come up later on, like you can ask me those questions. So we can jump into the breakout rooms.